Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster here on this busy Sunday night. It is July 16th, 2023. It's about 10:44 p.m. here, California time. Quite the activity. Goodness. Over the last 24 hours, it all began late last night with a 7.2 there in the Aleutian Trench. Of course, we're still seeing some activity, aftershock activity there. Also, earlier today, we did have a pretty large earthquake into the Argentina region. This earthquake got upgraded from a 6.5 to a 6.6, 171 kilometers deep here into the Argentina region. That is the Peru-Chile Trench. Definitely seen some broad area of earthquake activity. Also, we did see some movement here recently within the past hour or so around the Indonesia area, 5.6. This originally came in as a 5.8, a little bit of a downgrade. But we're starting to see a little bit of bouncing back and forth here now. We do have a 4.6 here into the Tonga Trench, 179 kilometers deep. So watch this region here, folks. It's been awfully quiet, but last night's earthquake activity there in the Alaska region seems to have set off a chain reaction of earthquake activity literally all around the Pacific Plate and adjacent plates over here. I'm talking about the Cocos and the Nazca Plate up against the Peru-Chile Trench. Mexico still seeing some aftershock activity from this morning, it looks like, a 5.1. Now I'm watching this area south of California here, a little cluster of earthquake movement. The general plate boundary out there gives us a this type of fashion, right? The Pacific Plate's kind of scooting to the northwest, the North American Plate towards the southeast, and that activity there, kind of watching maybe for some potential advancement here across the southern portion of the state of California, but I'm really not seeing it yet. But I'm keeping my eyes on this area pretty closely because we all know what sits up here. Los Angeles, obviously, but the major San Andreas Fault, the southern segment, is of concern. Definitely seeing some activity over the last 24 hours, including a 4.6. Like I said, it's a pretty good cluster of moderate movement here across the area. We'll keep an eye on that here in the next hours, and next couple days, actually. Elevated activity everywhere. 2.5 in the Pinnacles area. Right there on the creeping segment. Looks like it's, right on the creeping section here of the San Andreas Fault. A little spotty activity throughout Nevada as well, Mina and outside Carson City area. The southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone showing some activity as well. Latest of 2.3 right at the, it looks like on the Mendocino Fault there. Let me check out the tremor map here tonight and see what we have for Cascadia tremor. Looks like that's goodness. It's a pretty good amount of tremor kicking up. 270 epicenters of tremor. Last night, let's see what last night was. 0. Or at least yesterday was 0, but today looks a lot more active here. Talking about some broad scale activity, and it looks as though this activity began, well, about 8 o'clock or so this morning. Oh, so that would come after the that earthquake activity there into the Alaska region. So it looks like maybe that's putting a little bit of strain and pressure out here across this region. That's, of course, the Cascadia subduction zone. Got the Juan de Fuca Plate here as a whole, and this area is being subducted underneath the region here to the east. And that is building up, of course, the next mega quake there, 9.0 or greater. It's been 323 years since the last Cascadia mega quake, and it's building, definitely getting there. But this tremor came up out of the blue, and it's kind of on a broad scale following this movement this morning there in the Alaska area. Or that was late last night, technically today, but about 12 o'clock or so, 12:30 in the a.m. So we'll watch that. A little bit of movement outside here in Washington as well. Yellowstone National Park, there's not a whole lot going on, but I always like to check that just in case things get moved around. Plates get shuffled a little bit. Not super shuffled like in a deck of cards, but obviously there's some pressure going on out here against the North American Plate. There's the 7-pointer from last night. Now the 6.6. Hold on a second here. Oh, there we go. For some reason, that didn't update. See that? Even though I clicked refresh, it still didn't update to the latest. This here's the latest map. I was wondering where that 6.6 went to. That's going to be the signature right here. They're in Argentina, showing up pretty nicely on Yellowstone, but not quite as dramatic as that 7-pointer did there last night along the Aleutian Trench. That was quite the S wave that it produced. As you can see, didn't even phase Yellowstone at all. There's not a whole lot of activity. No localized microquake. Well, maybe one little spike of a quake there, but I wouldn't even call that an earthquake. So Yellowstone, stable for now. The rest of the state's movement out here in Oklahoma has been picking up outside of an odd area. The swarms over the past week or so have been mostly confined outside the El Reno area and over here in these. There's some oil fields that sit over here southwest of El Reno. This activity near Prague, it looks like, is a pretty good cluster of movement. All this activity looks like it stirred up following that 7.2, right? Getting mixed up on the quake magnitudes. It's just been awfully busy here today. 7.2. So if you look at this, look at what time these earthquakes started, about 1:30 in the morning. So that's just immediately following the that 7-pointer. You think, well, Oklahoma's a long ways away from that 7.2, right? But everything gets stirred up out here. One little earthquake, or even a large earthquake like this, can have consequences for building strain, building stress out here, thousands of miles away. Thousands of miles away. It's crazy to think about, but we see it all too often. So looking at this movement here in Oklahoma, looks like mid 3.4 going to be the largest there in Oklahoma. Now let's see what we have out here. Those look like some type of houses out there. A lot of times we'll see some oil pumping operations out here, but goodness, I am just not really... There's a pond, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a wastewater disposal pond. Can't really tell exactly what that is. I'll have to dig into this a little bit deeper. Either way, a little area of interest here around Oklahoma that's seen an uptick in movement. The new Madrid seismic zone pretty quiet here for now. 1.6 though, early this morning it looks like. Let's see what we got here for the Alaska region. Aside from that movement up there into the Aleutian Trench, we're getting a little activity further to the east here up against the plate boundary. So that's what makes me think here there's a little bit of squeezing going on, adding to trimmer out here across the Cascadia, and a general uptick here across the northern edge here of the Pacific Ring of Fire, northern section here. Over here across the Izu Trench and other areas. Most of this movement that we're seeing here on the board is from, looks like the Indonesia area. Although we did see a couple earthquakes bouncing back and forth here between Japan and the Philippines, adding to some further strain out here against the Filipino plate. Definitely keep an eye on that. Either way, look at that. Definitely a lot of broad-scale activity taking place here. So return to deeper movement out here in Tonga. We didn't quite get the earthquake activity I was expecting here across New Zealand, although a little bit came in. Let's go over here to the GeoNet servers and take a look here. We were getting a little swarm of 3s and 4s here a day or so ago. Looks like there was a little bit of activity here last night. I believe that was that 4-pointer, and some earthquake activity here throughout the day, it looks like. Around South Island. So let's see what we got for the magnitude numbers. Looks like, well, there's that 3.9, 4.0 yesterday as well. All magnitudes give us a good indicator. There's a 4.0. That kind of looks like it's way up there, though, along the Kermadec Trench. Pretty deep, 211 kilometers deep there, well north of North Island. As far as local seismic activity, that stuff that we've seen there on the drums, looks like it's going to be some of these upper 2s. Quite a few upper 2s out here across South Island area. There's a 3.79 hours ago, so we're getting back into some of the older activity, but definitely, you know, some uptick here across New Zealand, mostly yesterday, but it's still continuing today. This area definitely needs to catch up here in terms of earthquake movement. It's been awfully quiet across this zone. We've had a lot of larger scale activity down here across the southeast Indian Ridge area south of New Zealand, with only minimal adjustment here across this major plate boundary. Looks like USGS did show that 4.4 there, 17 kilometers deep into the Hikurangi area. That's at the surface levels. This is another major subduction zone in terms of creating a damaging earthquake there for the region. This one's a little bit less studied, or at least there's been some studies on it and information about it, but it was, I believe it was much further back in time compared to the Cascadia. But we'll check into that into another update. But I just wanted to point that out. New Zealand is in the line of seismic quietness, and that can't be good all the time. Let's see here. What else we got? Over here across the India area. Actually, this earthquake, 4.3. That's coming in early this morning. Also 4.1 here in Iran. Looking at the earthquake 3D globe here. Another 4.0 coming into the Indonesia area. Getting a pretty good cluster of activity here across that region. Like I say, this plate activity has been just set into motion here since last night's 7-pointer up there on the globe, and I don't even know where it went to. Hold on a second here. There we go. It was just barely hanging on. So that's the last 24 hours, it looks like. Mediterranean, pretty quiet. A couple aftershocks here around the Turkey area, and the Atlantic Ocean, quiet, very quiet for now. But we'll definitely keep an eye on things here, folks. Getting super active. All right, space weather activity. I'm still having some issues with that. Anyone else not able to access the SDO site? I know what it is. It's a invalid date on their certificate, but my browser will not, even with the security features off on here, it will not let me access the SDO site, the NASA site. So not for sure if it's just me. I don't think it is, because Solar Ham here has some issues going on too. It looks like they've reverted to the black and white imagery far as their sunspot activity goes. And it's kind of hard to tell, right? Different structures here of the magnetic spots that they harbor. It's kind of hard to tell in the black and white imagery. We are looking at, see, not even this one. That's weird. I guess there's a couple different sun pages here that we can look at. NASCOM.NASA works just fine for the latest imagery on the sun, but it really doesn't. I guess it gives you a little bit of an image here in the black and white features. And what we're looking for, I guess, here is difference in colors. On the other one, it was much easier to spot. But here, I guess we just have to do our best in terms of looking at the unstable areas in these sunspots. And it's just, it's a little hard to look at right now. But this area right here looks like getting some massive development around this main core. Like I say, it's kind of hard to tell in the black and white imagery, but definitely watch this region. And of course, this massive sunspot, southwestern quadrant of the sun, is still continuing to grow. A look at the, like I say, I don't visit this site too often, but they do have quite a bit of solar images. And then there's another one here, suntoday.imsal.com. This shows the UV filter here, which is, wow. Yeah, this kind of shows you the magnetic lines as well across the area. That's pretty cool to look at, but that's a little bit too much for me right now. I'm just going to go back here and check out the 4K imagery. It's a little weird. Okay, I'm just going to move on. But it definitely looks like there's some areas that we need to watch, like I mentioned here, this one and this other regional sunspot. But even this area here kind of looks like it's flaring slightly. I'll be glad when the SDO site gets back up and running. That way we can get back to looking at the space weather. But it looks like right now, let me go over here and check out the 4K while we have it. There we go. A little bit of flaring popping off here on the eastern limb of the sun, it looks like. Some newer sunspots coming around the bend. So it looks like it's going to be pretty active here right now. There is an elevated threat, 25% chance for an X flare. That's a fairly high number. Proton event 25%, M flare at 60%, and of course C flare activity at 99%. Looking at the last few hours or so, we're crackling with C flares. Did have some M flare activity overnight, it looks like. So we'll continue to watch this maybe for an X flare. So in the coming hours, a little bit of the KP index here that was I don't even know if this was forecasted or not. Looks like around the 4 to 5 range coming in, amplifying a little bit here of the auroras at the higher latitudes, polar regions. Doesn't look like anything major coming in though for now. 3372 is at pretty complex sunspot area. It does harbor a beta gamma delta class. Also 3363, that's that massive sunspot that we've been watching and covering for the past week or so. Now on the southwestern quadrant of the sun, that harbors a 10% chance for some X flares. That did produce an M2.9 and an M4.0. This one up here has produced many M flares, and that also does harbor a potential there for looks like an X flare potential. All right, weather out here. We had a couple sprinkles coming through the area around Chico today, or well, this evening, I should say. Just adding to the humidity and the heat out here. It's 87 degrees, but feels like 96. Got a 75-degree dew point with 66% humidity, and they call this a dry heat. I don't think so. We've had some high heat indexes here over the past few days. I know what it's like out there in the Gulf. It's nothing like that, but still for California, it's awfully humid right now where I'm at. All right. As far as any major severe weather threat goes, slight areas it looks like on the maps over the next couple days, but nothing big going on that I can tell. I was looking at the weather earlier here today, trying to get the big picture of when we're going to get some cool down. And, well, I disappointed myself because there is no cool down coming for the West Coast. There is a low pressure system right about here that's going to come in tomorrow, Monday, and cool down the Pacific Northwest, but we're going to stay underneath this heat dome where it's pretty much centered over here across the Four Corners area or slightly west, and that is just going to intensify and stick around. Next week is going to be hot for us as well. We're talking about 112 again, middle of the week, and there's no cool down in sight for the West Coast. We're baking, unfortunately. Long-term patterns show a continual dry area out there, and of course heat across this region. Now looking at this is kind of the looking down at the polar regions there to the north. Sometimes we can get a little bit better indicator of maybe what's going on, and maybe some changes that may be coming up. But looking up here, we're in North Pole area, Iceland, Greenland area. It still shows, a lot of high pressure systems up there. We're just coming down from a bunch of lows, but look at this. As we get into the end of July, all those little lows just disappear, and nothing but high pressure all over the place up here. So that's not a good sign for any type of cooling trend down across the areas of the states. And of course that's the West Coast area. So it is, it's just something I have to deal with. It's going to be hot, and I pretty much stayed inside today, just trying to stay cool. Not a big fan of this extreme heat. Out 5 minutes outside, and I just get a massive headache. All right, folks, I am going to jump off here, and all the live seismograph stations there look pretty quiet for now. Someone was mentioning about this Earthquake 3D program, and it's a pretty cool app. There's the free version, and then there's the paid version. This is a paid version that I use here. It gives you many options there to excuse me, to pick from in terms of feed data, different colored globes. I kind of like the plate dynamic map here. And it's from WOLTON.net, I believe. Just type into any search browser Earthquake 3D globe, and it should pop up. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Have a good night.